Every day up to 1,500 Somali refugees flood the northern Kenyan border town of Dadaad. They flee their country due to political instability, but more so due to the worst drought that the Horn of Africa has seen in a matter of 60 years. Our Nairobi team prepared this update.
It's been a long and difficult month-long journey for Hariro and her 3 daughters, the youngest of which is just 3 months old. The family has walked 450 kilometers from Somalia's coastal town of Kismayo to Dadaab in search of food and water. To survive, they relied on handouts from strangers along the way. Most of the family's cows died due to the drought, and sadly, so did Hariro's only son.
I am happy today. The food will bring some relief to my daughters and I. At least we will have shelter tonight.
The Dadaab refugee camp is the largest in the world and currently hosts more than 440,000 people, most of them from Somalia.
Over 100,000 people who have fled from southern areas of Somalia to Mogadishu, and they are all fleeing because of drought and famine in the southern areas. Now, the most challenging issue in southern Somalia is to have access to the people who are in need, to bring food, nutrition, supplies that would save lives at the moment.
For Kenya, as I just mentioned, it's more a social crisis, and the Kenyans and all those, civil society, government trying their best to help those refugees and the Kenyans affected. It's not yet an economic crisis because the core of Kenya's agricultural productivity is in the Rift Valley and in other parts of the country, and those had been affected in 2009. Fortunately, they're not yet as affected.
The Horn of Africa is experiencing its worst drought in decades. In recent weeks, parts of Somalia have officially been declared a famine by the United Nations. And while the full impact of the disaster is still to be determined, there is no doubt that there are huge economic implications for the region.
There's no doubt that it will have a significant impact. I think each of the governments is working out that impact for themselves. Whilst we deal with the here and now, we must also think about the longer term, and we know that the preparedness measures, the longer term resilience measures that some of the governments have put in place are beginning to pay off. So we have to continue with those. We can't just forget about the longer term, because climate change, population growth, environmental degradation, weak governance are all having their impact, and we have to deal with each and every one of those, not just on a national basis, but on a regional basis too.
I think if these refugees were to stay and couldn't return back, then there would be an economic bearing, especially for the affected districts. The short term is not, because a lot of the international agencies and the Kenyan private, through the Kenyan for Kenya initiative, are actually helping those refugees and the Kenyans affected to survive. And so I think the direct bearing on the short term is not yet evident. However, if you just look at the district and the county of Wajir, where Dadaad is housed, and the other refugee camps, you almost have a situation of 1 refugee for 1 inhabitant. You have some 660,000 inhabitants in Wajir County, and Dadaad on its own is already 500,000 people almost. So that, in any other country, that would create challenges and imbalances that someone needs to be anticipated going forward.
For Hariro and her children, the food supplies and fresh water might bring temporary relief to the long journey. But the road to rebuilding their lives will remain a long one.